Welcome again to HubMed Coder. In the previous video, we have learned what is Dart and functions and variables in Dart. Now, in this lecture, I am going to first tell you the concept of class and object. But before that, let me tell you something more about variables. Now, write void main. This is the entry point of Dart program we have learned in the previous video, and what we have learned in previous video is int, and this int is the variable type and this num is the variable name, and we can assign any value to that variable. That is, this is actually a container who can contain any integer. So this is an integer, this is in the container num. We cannot put here any non-integer number like this, where there is a decimal 23.23. So we cannot put that in an int variable. We cannot put a character also in a int type variable. So how will we do those things? And we can obviously cannot put our name here, because this is a container which can contain only integers. Okay, so we can put like this. And if I want to put a decimal point number, then we have to define that by this, like number or something like that. The name can be at your own will, whatever name you want to give, you can give. Here you can see that double decimal number, this decimal number can now contain any decimal point number. And now if I want to put my name in any container, so we have to give the type string there. And if we want to store a single character here, then also we have to use string. Okay, here this, you cannot put just char and abc and equals a or something like a. You cannot put that because it will throw an error, because undefined class char. Now let me, as you learn that there is not only the data type int is there, but also there can be double string as well, and there is many more. Whenever we will need those, I will discuss about those there, because I don't believe putting a lot of things without practical implementation is just a headache. So now let me go through the class and object concept. Actually, these things, this int, this double, you can see in the documentation that int is a class, double is a class, string is also a class. Okay, so actually in Dart these are not only data type but class. Now let me go slowly into the class and object concept. Okay, so these int and double are the predefined class. Of course, we can make our own class, and this num is an object of this class. If you are confused, then let me clear in other way. Actually, this int is a generic thing. By just saying int, you cannot visualize something. But if I particularly say after writing this program that num, then the Dart know that num is a integer type object which holds the value 12. There can be other objects of type int or of class int precisely. So if I say num2, then the Dart will understand that okay, so we are saying about this num2, and when we say num, then it will think about the num. Okay, so if you still confused, then let me give you another example. You just think about any of your friends. Okay, just visualize any of your friend. What comes into your mind? The face of your friend, the skin color, the hair color and all, the name of your friend, these all comes to your mind. But if I say a person, then you can visualize something like a human being is there, but you cannot give it a name. I am not saying about a specific person, but I am saying about generic thing, a person. By just saying that a person, you cannot think or you cannot visualize a specific person. But if we say a specific friend of yours, like any name, a very common name in India is Rahul. So by saying Rahul, we can or I can visualize a person. This is the concept. When we say Rahul or any other name specifically, then we specify the object. Then you can visualize that person's skin color, that person's hairstyle, that person's hair color and all, and that person's name obviously. But just by saying person, this is a class. Now let me give you a real life example. Let me create a class by writing class, and let me take the same example person, and any object of this generic class will have certain states like and then let me tell you the naming convention. Just you have seen that if I give here capital N, it is not throwing an error, but it is changed the color, because it is saying that name non-constant identifiers using lower camel case. So actually lower camel case means you have to start with lower case, just like I have started skin colors first character with lower case, and then in the second word of these we have give it a capital character. Okay, so this is how lower camel case is written, and this is the convention. This is not going to throw an error, but this is a convention. If it is containing two words, then start with small character and then in the next word give cap character. And this is also the convention, the class name should start with capital character. Okay, so of course if we start the class name with small character, it will not throw an error, but it is giving us some warnings. Okay, so it is always better to follow the conventions. Okay, these are not strict rules, but these are conventions that says us to follow. So for the time being, let me think that these are the 4 states a person have, but in real life a person can have many more. And when we change the state, or when we play with the state, like a person can have some state like current status is sitting. So a person can be sitting or can be walking or can be in any other state. So by default, when we create an object of a person, we are keeping that sitting. Okay, and if we do some behavior, like if you are sitting and someone calls you in your home, then you just stand up and walk towards whoever called you, then your current status will be walking, then you will again stop, and then your current status will be standing. Okay, so these are called states of a class. Okay, so now we can define our own object. Okay, and just like we were defining an object int a, just like we were defining an object of class int a, here we have defined an object1 of type person, or of class person, you can say. But now what happens if we print a? Let us see, because we have not assigned any value to a, so it should return null. Okay, and what if print object1, and now if we run, then it should also return null, because we have not assigned anything to this object. Okay, how can we do that? Like in case of integer int, we have assigned an integer, and now in case of person, how we can assign these things? For that thing, there is the concept comes constructor. I am giving you very simple example of constructor. Constructor usually have the same name as the class name. Okay, and then we pass some arguments over here, like so. Let me just give 2 parameters. Okay, now okay, so how this works, I'll tell you in a bit. Here now we can assign by saying that person object1 is a person. There we can assign we can pass, you can say that a string and another string. In the first passed value we can pass any name, like I am passing DV or some any name you can pass. Then if you want to pass the skin color, let me say black. Okay, so we are here creating a person whose name is Dev and color is black. And how we have defined that? Because when we call these by passing these two things, actually this DV string is passed in this person name, and then it is assigning to the name property of this person. So in this way, object 1's name is becoming Dev, and then the same goes with the color property as well. The black is going through this person's skin color, then this string is assigned to this skin color property of this person. Okay, this person object's name is now Dev, and color, skin color precisely you can say is black. Now if we print object 1 dot name, this dot is for object 1 has a lot of property, like a skin color or a hair color or name or height or something like that. So if we precisely want to know what is the thing we want to know about, or what is the thing we want to print of object, so here we are saying that print the name of object 1. Now if we run the program, we can see that there will be a output Dev, because the name of object 1 is Dev. Now let me cut this, because this is doing nothing in the program. And now obviously we can print as well the skin color. Okay, it will print Dev because this line is printing Dev, and then black this because this line is printing black, because the skin color of object 1 is black here, as we have made it. Okay, and if we now print object 1's height, what will it print? Obviously it should print null, because we are not assigning anything to this height of object 1. Yes, it is printing null. And now if we assign something like this equals 250, and yes, it is insane because no one side is going to 250 centimeter or something, but now if we print the same thing below this assignment part, then we will see that first it will print Dev for this line, then black, then null, then we are assigning the height of object 1 is 250, then we are printing the height, then it will print 250. It was that simple. And obviously if we print the current state of object 1, then it will obviously print the sitting, because it has a default value of sitting. Actually it was named current status, not current state, so it was giving an error for that. And now you can see the sitting is printed over here. So we have learned what is class. We have created an object of a class that we have defined. We have learned that a class can have multiple properties, which is actually called state, and we have learned how to define constructor, and obviously we can take many more parameters here like string, hair color, and so, and obviously we can change this by tapping this here, like the height has a property null previously, and now we are assigning 250 to the height of object 1, and obviously we can have multiple objects. Okay, and let me now tell you about the behavior. Okay, so the behavior is methods here. Void, I can define a behavior like start walking, and you can see this is similar to these functions, but when we put the same thing, these functions are inside any class, then we call it methods. Both basically does the same, but we just call it method, and when it is outside the class, then we call it function. So let me call this function. Now it has been printed sitting. Now if we call this function object one's behavior, that start walking, sorry, and now if we print this, because when we call the object once method or behavior start walking, then what it does is it changes the current status to walking, and now if we print that, then you can see that it will be printed walking over here. Okay, and of course, like in the real world, multiple person have multiple properties and behaviors, because every person have their own properties and their own behaviors. Like a other person called object 2 is having some other name, calling some other name, and skin color may be white this time. Okay, so now if we print the same things for object 2, actually not all the things, let me print just these up to these or up to these. Okay, and obviously we have to change this to object 2, object 2, okay. So if we now run this, then we will see that this was previously printing for these statements. Now this is printing, this print statement is some other name. For this print statement it is printing white, and for these null, for these it is assigning 250 again. We can assign a different thing, of course. Then it will print after assigning 175. If we print the height, then it will print 175. And now if we print the height of object 1 again, then it will, you can see that there will be no effect to object 1. object 1's height is still 250. So if we change object 2's height, that is nothing to do with object 1's height. Object 1's height is still same because we haven't changed the height of object 1, but we have changed the height of object 2 here. So if we print object 1's height, it will again print 250 only, and current status is setting of object 2. And if we call start walking, or in this case you can say that start talking, then we can change that to talking also. In this way we can call object 2's start talking method, and then if we print object 2's current status, then it will print talking. Okay, and now if we print object 1's current status, then you can see it will still print the same as previous, that is walking. That was lastly changed to object 1, because this statement has nothing to do with object 1. Object 1 and object 2 is the objects, or are the objects of the same class person, but these are two different objects. So I have again and again told you the same thing. Now I think if you think it yourself, it will be much better and you will understand it much better. This is really simple concept, and this is most important concept of any programming language, any modern object oriented programming language. You can say why object oriented, because the whole programming language is oriented to these objects. Like you can think here, everything is the object, like this is the object, this is the object, this is the object, and this object 2 is the object, this object 1 is the object. So whole programming is based on some objects here. So that is how new object oriented programming languages works, I can say. And then we will learn the difference between functions and methods. Okay, so I have already told you these are called methods, and if the function, the same thing is outside the class, then it is called function. And here is another small thing that let me just give A plus B, and now this is function, but this is method. So what is the difference? This looks like same. Actually the difference is, this is actually behavior of any object of class person, but this is not like that. This is a universal function. We can anywhere call this function, like we can call directly this function 4, 16, and if we call that, then it will print in the end 20, because it will call this add function and pass this 4 and 16 integers to it, and it will print 4 plus 16 equal to 20. But we cannot simply call this start working method, because this is actually a behavior of an object of class person. We have to call these, actually there is no parameter inside it, so we cannot pass any parameter to it. But if we want to call this method, we have to call via an object. Like here I am going to call that method via object 2. So we can call that method via an object, or you can say this is actually behavior of any object of class person. So we can only call this behavior for any object only, but this is much more powerful than this, because they might have the same structure and same functionalities, but this is more powerful because this doesn't need any object to be called. Okay, so I think now we are pretty much clear about class. Here this person class we have defined. In the class there is some state of this class. Those states changes, or those states are different for different instances of that class, or you can say different for different objects of the class. And we actually use instances and object interchangeably. Okay, and we learned about constructors, and we have learned about behaviors of any class. Actually the behaviors should be of any object, and we have learned about what is the difference between these behaviors or methods and functions. So a lot of keywords are there. I suggest you, if you are very new to programming, you can keep these terms written in any diary or something, because these are the terms like object and class and blah. These are the terms, by the time being it will be habituated to you, because these are the only terms you have to memorize, and throughout the course you will not end up getting so many new things, because this object oriented programming, and the programming has the concept class and object, and you will again and again listen about class and object. We will create class and create that class's object again and again. Just for an example, you can think this button is an object of class button. Okay, this text is, this is also actually a button, is an object of the button class, and this button has a different color, this which matches this header color, and this button has a different color, and when you hover over that button, this button colors is different and this button's color is different. So these are basically objects of the class button, and you will see the power of class and object there. Like, you can think these are the trivial things, but think it in real life. This button, this button, this button, this button, this button, and anywhere in your app, if you create a button, you will basically create an object of class button. You don't need to, just like this button and something in your will, a button's name, and then we will assign the states of that button, like what will be the icon, what will be the text, and what will be the background color, what will be the hover color when you hover over that. So those are the states of that button. Just by saying that, we can create a button. We will see those things in a while, or in the next video, you can say, but I am just trying to give you a real example how this class and object thing will be applicable to our own program. Okay, if you are feeling like a lot of things has been taught by me, then don't worry. These are some basic concepts, and these is going to repeat again and again throughout the course, so it will be habituated to you. Don't worry, just think of like everything you have understood today. Thank you.